What up, what up, what up? Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, want to welcome you to another edition of the Brothers Briefing. So glad that you are here with us. I'm your co-host, Charles Coleman Jr., and joining me, as always, is my amazing friend and co-host, Mr. Richard Fowler. Make sure you are liked, subscribed, and sharing the Brothers Briefing podcast, because this is where you will get news, views, and lifestyle from Black men. Richard, how you doing today, my friend?
I'm good. It's it's a good week. Happy 4th. Happy I guess former 4th. Happy 250 to all those who celebrated, to those who found the 250 to be a little murky. Happy 250 to happy non-250 to you too.
I'm actually like low-key fascinated by the number of people who really weren't with celebrating the 250th. I didn't expect that I would be in the minority like I was, like on a huge level. Like I didn't expect to be alone in that regard, but there were a lot of people who had a very meh attitude.
Oh, that's what I was.
Yeah, like myself, sort of were like, yeah, I'm over it before it even started. So yeah,
well, and I think honestly, part of that has to do with, and I got to change. I mean, I did a couple of things, so I'm not going to say I didn't like celebrate the two. There was a documentary on Netflix called The American Experiment that included Hillary Clinton and Kamala Harris. I watched it. I think it's phenomenal. It was executive produced by Tom Hanks, and it really just goes into, the parts of the founding that we don't think about. So it talked about like people in the founding that we just didn't know about, like Governor Morris, who I found to be a fascinating character. And then, I'm a total history buff, so I was like, ooh, a new character. And he talks about how he, was adamant. He ultimately lost the debate, but they used him to introduce a 3/5 compromise, which is, when they made, Charles and I are 3/5 of a person. And maybe if you're listening to this and you're Black, you too were 3/5 of a person. But how he was like, how can you give the Southern states this? How can they count these as 3/5 of a person and not give them a political power? Like, how do you do both things? How do you say you're 3/5 of a person so we can count you towards the census so we can gain political power, but then don't bestow on them political power? And how he was, vigorous about, these are people, they deserve the right to vote. And he ultimately was the person who wrote the Constitution, like penned it, actually took everybody's edits on paper and wrote the final document. And it was interesting, Charles, that one of the reasons why slavery and enslavement is not mentioned, the word is not mentioned in the document, has everything to do with Governor Morris being an abolitionist. It's like, I would not put this word in this document because I do not want this word to be associated with this country. And, this is it's a very heinous thing. And enslavement is a heinous thing. And enslaving people is heinous. And he was the only one. There were Southerners who were sent to the Constitutional Convention who were abolitionists. We rarely ever talk about them. And it just tells you, as we think about American history, who we choose to elevate, right? Absolutely. And who we choose to not talk about. This is the guy who actually penned the Constitution with his fingers.
Right.
Didn't know about him. And I know a lot about American history, like a lot.
I thought I heard a rumor that you were you had got the gig to be the MC at the Freedom 250 celebration. I was looking. Is there any truth to that? I was looking on stage.
There's no truth to that rumor. No.
Oh, so I watched all that 20 seconds for nothing, hoping to see a speckle of pepper, and my American Jamaican friend on stage introducing. No. I thought I was looking for the behind the scenes with Kid Rock. But anyway, look.
No, I was Kid Rock. I thought Vanilla Ice did that. Like the one that artist had was like Vanilla Ice and Flow Rider.
Tell me the difference. All right. One is rock, one raps rock and one rocks rap. I don't care.
I mean, both. I mean, I don't know. I think Vanilla Ice had one hit, so I guess we can argue that Vanilla Ice is a one-hit wonder, right? He gets one-hit wonder.
It's not even an argue. It's not an argument. It's just
Ice Baby, and other than that,
I forget. I'm a little older than you. Yeah, like Vanilla Ice had one hit. Kid Rock had sort of like one, like my name is Kid.
Oh, I'm happy you know one of his songs. I don't
know the song. I know the lyric.
Well, I mean, it's just sort of sad, right? Because the ideal of the 250 was supposed to be a congressional committee. It was supposed to be, and if you look at the other like centennials that we've had, they've been these real bipartisan moments.
Yeah, I mean, but
it's sort of above party.
We actually could do a whole episode on this because the president made it his own personal grift.
Yeah, he made it about him.
Well, specifically, and I don't want to get too deep into the weeds here, but just in case people are wondering, what Richard is talking about was supposed to be the purpose of a government begun initiative called America 250.
Correct.
And then then that started like 10 years ago. And what ended up happening was President Trump, upon getting back in office, started this thing called Freedom 250. And Freedom
Which
250
is different.
Was something
like the state fair, the Ferris wheel, all of that is Freedom 250. It's a different committee, different than the congressional committee.
Yes.
And it looked different. It sounded different. And like it had different artists. I mean, you look at the Barack Obama library opening where you have Bruce Springsteen on stage with Jennifer Hudson and Common and Jennifer Lopez's baby daddy. What's his name?
Mark Anthony.
Like all on stage together celebrating America. And you're like, wow, this is so dynamic. This is so uniquely American, right? Because you have all these different cultures blended together. And then you had like Vanilla Ice.
Yeah.
And Flo Rida.
Well.
Okay.
All right. Gotta get started. I will first.
Happy 4th.
Yeah, happy 4th. If that was your jam, I hope you enjoyed.
I went to my friend's house and we hung out at the pool.
It was raining.
We had crab legs.
Yeah, shout out to you because it was raining up here, but wasn't much going on in New York City and that.
But that's a very black thing to do. We had crab legs. I mean, crab legs is very like the place where we got the crab legs was packed. Black people. Listen, there's something about. I mean, and now we need to move on. But there's something about living in the Mid-Atlantic region, D.C., Maryland, Virginia, Black folks, and anytime there's Mother's Day, 4th of July. Labor Day is a little late for crabs if you know anything about if you live in this region. Juneteenth, it's like Black people get crabs, and it's like it was so much joy at the crab place. Like, because I went to go pick, I'm usually the one that gets the crab for the friends, so I'm the one who will pick up the crabs. And there was so much joy. There was so much Black people in there having a good time. And like I saw one lady, she's like, "It's hot," and I'll never forget her. I should have got her name, but she's like, "It's hot." But I got my crabs, and she had her crabs, and she was so happy. And I'm like, you know what, sis? I got my crabs. So I had my 10-pound box. And so I was happy. I had my crabs, had my bushel, and I was good to go.
I'm not mad at that. For our first story of today, it is a July 4th holiday weekend related story, but unfortunately not at all a celebration. At this point, many of you have heard the name Nolan Xavier Wells, and this is a young man, a teenager, a young boy from Mississippi, a Black boy who during the July 4th weekend went on a boating trip to hang out with some of his white friends. I believe it was 3 white male friends of his or companions, acquaintances, folks he knew, trusted, went out with. They came back and he did not. And after an extensive search of the surrounding area, which is basically sort of like it's off the coast of Mississippi.
Horn Island.
Horn Island. Yeah, Horn Island. And Horn Island is basically where boats, a lot of folks, they sort of charter boats. They go out in the water. It's not incredibly deep, at least not certain parts of it near Horn Island. You can go pull up to Horn Island, park your boat, sort of hang out in the water, you drink, you party, you hang out, and you go back to the mainland. But in any event, Nolan was with these other folks. He ends up being missing. They come back without him. They have his cell phone. They say they don't remember what happened. And a few days later, the investigation finds a body, and it is Nolan Xavier Wells' body, at least as was identified by his parents. And unfortunately, he was dead. This, for the Brothers Briefing, is a story that connects with both of us for a lot of reasons. But I would love to get, Richard, your initial reaction, your thoughts, and sort of like, how did this story land on you when you heard about it.
I mean, one, a death of a black man is a tough story.
Yeah.
Especially a death of a black man that has so much promise, right? And Nolan, in this case, I mean, he's a football star, had a lot of promise. You see a family that's mourning. They recently hired attorney Ben Crump.
Yep.
But this story to me, and this story is like it's made its rounds on the internet, and there's so many people commenting on it. And a lot of the comments I agree with, right? So the last time you see the last picture you see of Nolan is a picture with him shirtless, wearing blue trunks and black sunglasses on the boat with his friends. The friends were on a trip with him and their families. They released a formal statement responding to the allegations about their involvement. However, they've collectively said, to your point, they're not sure what happened. One of the friends, their mother is a judge. She has taken down all of her social media. All of these friends have disabled their Instagram accounts.
Yep.
And the police are sort of saying we don't see any wrongdoing here. And I just have a lot of questions, more so than answers. And one, I'm trying to figure out why, and maybe it's just me, but why like all these individuals weren't detained and immediately questioned about Nolan's whereabouts. Because that's the first thing. I mean, you're a lawyer, so I guess that's the question I have for you. You're a former prosecutor. And I think if anybody who was in law enforcement would say, okay, so you were the last 4 people that saw him, and then there was a young lady. Y'all left him on the island, but you came back with a cell phone. I have questions for all 4 of you, so you guys might want to lawyer up because I have a lot of questions to ask about.
Yeah, it's not even a question of like you guys might want to lawyer up because that's not even something that the police normally tell.
I wouldn't tell you to lawyer up. I just have questions. I have warrant. I got some subpoenas and I got some warrants I have to issue.
I don't know the extent of the investigation that was conducted with these young men, but I do know that as a former prosecutor, if you have a situation where there is a dead body and there are individuals who were in close proximity to that dead body, and you don't have any other leads, and I'm not saying they do or don't, we don't know at this point, but if you don't have any other leads, you would be pretty hard pressed to let those folks just sort of walk out of your precinct after some questioning. I mean, this investigation, I would hope, is far from over, but at this point, I don't see how any of those people are not elevated from persons of interest, what we call
that part,
people who, sort of like would obviously be people you want to talk to actual suspects. Especially,
to me, they are at least persons of interest
at a minimum. I mean, I don't see how, and this is the other thing, right? The notion of the cell phone becomes significant, and I'm not trying to like turn this into NCIS or CSI, but if they had cell phone reception out in the sort of space by Horn Island and all points in between, there would be an effort to triangulate the cell phones of the other individuals who were with him. Because if you kept his phone and you had his phone, then at some point proximity wise, you all were with him. And if he had his phone, and if for some reason you all did not, none of you had your phones, that in and of itself should raise suspicion. So either you had the phones, for example, and we can triangulate where you were in relation to, or whether you were in proximity to him during whatever the estimated time of death was, or none of you had your phone. He was the only person who had his phone, in which case it seems like a coordinated effort, because what teenagers do you know at 18 years old, for whatever reason, just leave
their cell phone
and just leave their phones and don't have them. Right?
I have a sister who's 20. She's 20. And that girl, we went to a funeral last week, and that girl was like this, and she was in her phone for the whole funeral. And I don't mean to laugh at that, but I have a couple of critiques here. Critique number 1. If Nolan was white and the 4 friends were black, this would be a national news story. The fact that neither your network nor mine are covering this wall to wall, I haven't seen any segment about this.
Who was it? The old mother who was kidnapped. She wasn't even killed. She was kidnapped because she her daughter was on Good Morning America. I can't even remember who it was. We covered that story like it was the president's ransom. And here you are, you have an 18-year-old black boy dead in Mississippi. I mean, the story.
Gabby Pertino was missing. It was a Gabby Pertino. Like, it was covered wall to wall for weeks.
That's what I mean. That's what I'm talking
about.
So
the fact that there's no national coverage of this is problem number one for me. Problem number two for me, which is a story that seems to sort of be percolating in black spaces, is, are black children safe? So number one, I have two. I mean, there's two big buckets here. Bucket number one: why is this not a national news story? We actually know the answer to that question. The answer to that question takes us all the way back to Trayvon Martin.
But there's another important piece to this, right?
Well, hold on 1 minute. It takes us back to Trayvon Martin, and I've said this all along. I've said this on there. You can pull the tapes where I say Black Lives Matter is a question. To me, it's always been a question. Does a Black life matter in America? And once again, the media is proving the answer to that question in 2026, years after that slogan was created. A Black life does not matter in America because a black boy goes missing. His murder is unsolved. There are 4 suspects in that case, and the news media not covering it, not remotely covering it. So that answers that question.
But there's another piece to the answer. It's an and also, because I think everything that you just said is absolutely correct about the value of these sorts of stories. But I also want to, on both of our behalves, point out for the audience, because they might miss this point, the importance of who are the storytellers. There's a reason, and Richard and I have talked about this on a number of different occasions. How do you not have a black man with a daily on cable news, on national news, behind that desk? Because I guarantee you that if you get a black man, if you get a brother who's sitting at the desk and he has a daily on a national program,
we can at least do a segment about this in the D block.
There's no way that you don't hear about this story.
I mean, we at least I'm fighting the editors, I'm fighting the news director. We're in the E block.
I might have to take, even if we are in the E block.
Yeah, I'm saying I'm resigning unless they get.
I might have to take an L and just.
I'm running all the way
on air and just talk about it on air, right? Like,
let's add it to the panel.
Yeah, even if I did it, even if I did my own read on the subject, right? Like, if I got to take that L and sit in the boss's office and hear about it afterwards, then yeah. But my point is, this is an example of why. Who's telling?
This is why representation matters, right? Because there isn't a black man single anchored show on the weekday for us to be talking about Nolan. And it goes to my second point, and this story's percolated on the internet. Similar to you, Charles, I grew up in Weston, Florida. Weston's changed a lot. When I grew up in Weston, Florida, there were 2 black families on my block, and we were the only 2 black families on the whole block. And I, played street hockey with white kids, hung out with white kids. We would, when we were building our neighborhood, we'd go throw rocks in the pool, in the pond with white kids. Went to an elementary school and a middle school with all white kids. Even in high school, though, we were a mixed high school. My debate partner was a white boy, traveled with him, went to debate camp with him. It has raised this question around, are black kids safe in white friend groups? Yeah. And this is a real question that I hear. I mean, there's black mommy blogs talking about this. There are black dad blogs talking about this. I think it's worth, airing this question out on our show, because there's a lot of fathers that listen to our show that I'm sure are wrestling with, are my kids safe hanging out with their white friends? Or do we need to have another talk about what to do with your white friends?
I want to say that as someone who went to prep school and had a, different variation of the experience that you just described, Richard, my mom never let me go with a group of folks somewhere that she did not know who would be the adult supervisor. And if I did, the group of folks, I was not the only black kid there. I was always with someone else. I think that there are a lot of different factors into that conversation, but the short answer is no, they're not. And I'm not prepared to say that they are. And until I'm prepared to say that they are, the answer is going to be no. If it's I don't know, then that for me is a no. And that's just how I sort of look at it. And so for me, I don't think that we should be allowing our children from a place of protection to be by themselves in these sorts of groups, not by themselves. Now, we have seen some other horrific incidents of, black kids going together on vacations and then somehow someone doesn't make it out. But those are far more rare than these mixed groups where you're the only one and it's a slumber party or it's a vacation or it's an international trip and somehow we don't make it home. And yeah, it's uncomfortable for us, but it shouldn't be. It should actually be more uncomfortable for them. It should be more uncomfortable for majority culture to realize that there is validity in the idea that when we go to these trips and places and spaces that we're supposed to be among friends, that our children are not safe being with y'all. And yeah, there's an element of like prank culture and pranks going wrong and all types of other stuff. But I am not willing to write this off, even without knowing every detail. I'm not willing to dismiss the notion of malice or foul play or anything else. We don't know yet. We don't have those details. But at the end of the day, Richard, your question is a valid one. And again, my answer is a resounding no, because if it's not an affirming yes, right, then it has to be a no. If you have to guess whether our kids are going to be safe in these environments, then the guess is not good enough for our kids because their kids can die, and
I guess
died.
And I guess the other question, right, because we were also talking about white environments where wealth is involved, right? Like, or privilege is involved. And I think that does make, maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm right. Maybe that makes a bit of a distinction, right? Like, in this case, like, one of the moms is a judge, right? And she reveals herself very early as a judge. And so we're assuming that there's some wealth here. And what makes this story so interesting, at least for me, is that oftentimes how the black kids end up in these spaces is because, at least in my story, is, mom and dad work really hard to move you out of black neighborhood, to move you into good schools, safe neighborhood, which puts you into white suburbia. That was how we get there. Me and my brother get to white suburbia because my mom works overtimes to the nine. She works her fingers to the bone, right? Like, she basically lives at Jackson Memorial Hospital working overtimes. So we leave the black blighted neighborhood to move into white suburbia with the idea that we get a better shake or a better leg up at the American dream. And at the same time, I feel, that's why I feel for this mother so deeply. It's in doing so, am I subjecting my child to harm? Because when I put him in the good school, when I get him enrolled into the high quality school, which is all we want, which has the algebra, which has the AP statistics, which has the AP government, or when I get him a scholarship into the prep school, or when I work extra so I can afford the prep school, the only friends he can make in said prep school are all the white kids, because they know black kids in there. Like, there's 2 or 3 black kids in the school with him. So all he has is white friends to make. And in making white friends who are probably not struggling to be in that school, in trying to do good, am I subjecting him to harm?
Yeah. And so just for an instructive purpose, because I don't want to assume that everyone who is listening to this show may understand this or has the answers. In my experience and Richard's experience, yeah, I don't want you all to assume anything about how these things played out. While I was confronted with that on a different scale, I wasn't the only one. I think out of 88 graduating students in my class in high school, 8 of us were Black, or out of 80, I think it was 8 of us who were Black. So I wasn't literally the only one, but there were very few of us. That being said, what I will tell you is that 2 things. Number one, if you're a parent and you're in these situations, the extracurricular stuff that your kid is involved in, it has to be balanced or counterbalanced with what they're experiencing in school and in these spaces. Now, with Nolan Xavier Wells, I get it. He was an athlete. Having been an athlete, like, I understand you want to hang with your teammates because these are people you bond with, you feel safe around, you've been in practices with and spent long hours and days working toward a common goal. So I do get it. I'm not going to sort of dismiss that. But I wasn't in Jack and Jill, but all my friends were from school. And so I was with them. I was hanging out with them. I was at my church choir. I was, Baptist Youth Fellowship. I was at my AAU team, traveling with them. So my grounding ended up outside of school being largely connected to culture, even though the friends that I had in school were mostly white. What I will say is we always have to be aware, and this is, taking another step back. If there are any sort of non-Black persons who are listening to this right now, I want you to consider this when you think about life as a Black person in America. We are always having to have these little tricks and conversations and maneuvers around how to navigate regular life that other cultures don't have. And I don't think people appreciate that as much as they should. That being said, I think that we have to, on a broader level, Richard, think about the notion of white proximity and how we value it. Because there is a point where it's almost like Icarus, where it's like you flew too close to the sun. And I know that that's like,
it might have cost Nolan his life.
That's what I'm saying. And, and I realized that, like, if you're a parent and you're thinking about your kid hanging out with other kids and you find out that one of your kid's friends is the son of a judge, why wouldn't you feel comfortable with that person hanging out with them? I mean, I think it's a natural thing. So, like, I definitely, for anybody out here who's like second guessing the parents, don't do that. Because
no, I don't blame this mother at all.
Yeah. I'm sure you don't. But, like, there are other people who are like, well, why would you? Don't do that. Like, if you heard, oh, their kid is their parent is a judge, you're gonna think, sure. At the same time, that same situation, like you just said, Richard, that same proximity to power, if you're the parent in this situation, you're also questioning, is this playing a factor into why I have so many questions about my child's death? Is this playing?
And that's absolutely why, because they have another level of
exactly.
privilege. And
exactly.
I mean, very similar to you. I mean, I was blessed that, like, my parents are Jamaican. My mom is Jamaican and crazy. So I was, undergirded by a very Jamaican church that kept us Jamaican. But, and I ended up going to a magnet school, which was very Haitian and very Black. But where I understood race in the 3rd grade. And it is, as I'm working on my book, there's a whole chapter on it. It's called the Little Red Radio. And the reason why I talk about the radio is because in the 3rd grade was the year of the O.J. Simpson trial when I was in 3rd grade. And it was me and a girl named Viola. She was a Haitian immigrant. Her parents were Haitian. My parents were Jamaican. We were the only 2 Black people in a class of 30. And I remember the O.J. Simpson trial because it was so racially driven.
Yeah.
And I remember our teacher, I won't say her name for this show, but I remember her playing the verdict in class, because the verdict happened around maybe like 1 o'clock in the afternoon Eastern time. And she put a red radio on her little teacher station in the front of the classroom without a lesson plan, without context.
And this is in Florida.
Huh?
And this is in Florida.
This is Florida, Western Florida. Without anything, she put on the radio and we heard the verdict. We heard the judge read the verdict off. And I remember it's when I realized that there was double consciousness, and it's the first time I understood that you could be in the room, you could receive information, and you could be having a different lived experience than other people in the room around you. I must have been 7 or 8 years old, and I had to sort of digest that, right? Because I knew as a Black person, not talking about the context of OJ now, I'm putting OJ back where he was in the year that he was in it, that like I should have been happy. Like it's supposed to be happy. Like OJ won. Like this is the moment to celebrate. And I remember looking at Viola, who was across the classroom. We sort of looked at each other and we sort of had this smile. And then I went back to being sad because everybody in the class was sad. And the teacher bursted out into tears. And the teacher from next door like started hugging her. And like I was happy. And I knew my mom was happy because she had watched the trial the whole time. And I had this moment of celebration with Viola from across the class. Like we sort of looked at each other and was like, hey. And then we went to being sad because all of our classmates were sad because their parents told them that they should be sad. Mm-hmm. And we knew that we should be happy, but we couldn't be happy because we were in a room full of white kids and they were all sad. And the teacher was demonstrating sadness. So all we could be was sad. And that was the moment I realized, wow, this is what race is. Race is, I could be in a room, I can receive information, I could be having a completely different lived experience than all my classmates receiving the same information. And it's one of those moments. And the teacher didn't put, I mean, I think now we might live in a different era, but the teacher didn't give it any context. She didn't give it any structure. She just thought 7-year-olds should just receive, 7 or 8-year-olds should just receive this information and just like process it, just go. Right. And
I am really flabbergasted by what you're telling me.
Because, no, you shouldn't be.
Well, no, I shouldn't be. But at the same time, I'm like, I was in 10th grade when this happened. And even then, it was a lot. I think that it was a lot for some 15-year-olds to sort of process in that space. The idea that in the 3rd grade, without any sort of context or whatever, like that would to me sort of be like some sort of educational malpractice. Like I'm not a child psychologist by any stretch, but certainly the idea of even putting you all in that situation seems absurdly irresponsible. But look, we have to move on, but I do think that the importance of these conversations on the Brothers Briefing is exactly why you come here. This Nolan Xavier Wells story is extremely nuanced. It's layered and it's not going anywhere because we're not going to let it.
And I mean, I to your point, I think Nolan lost his life, but there's so many Nolans out there. I mean, I think what you're hearing in this moment is that Charles and I have had Nolan moments where you're in these white spaces and harm is happening to you. And even the adults in the room don't necessarily know that harm is happening. And they don't know they're the ones doing the harm.
Right.
Right. Which is basically what happened to me. I mean, at almost 40 years old now, I think it was a moment of self-discovery more so than a moment of harm, but it was a moment of harm when you put it in, like how you said, like it's educational malpractice, right? To not create a lesson plan and help the students understand what's happening, help understand the cultural context of the moment, right? But it just, because I mean, and we all know that O.J. Simpson trial was so racially charged, but it just speaks to what it is to point you made earlier, and the reason why I brought the story up was what it is to be a Black student or a Black young person in an all-white space, and to understand how we get there. Because I think that what I want people to walk away from this segment, especially if you're a non-Black person listening to this, or you're a Black person that doesn't live that aren't in all Black spaces. Oftentimes we get here for opportunity.
Right.
We get here for opportunity. Nolan is in this neighborhood, and I'm sure if you talk to his mother, she will tell you I was trying to make sure that he had every opportunity he could. And that was my mom's story. I wanted to give my two boys every shot that they could get at that American dream. And the best way I thought to do it was to move them into a zip code where I thought they could get a high quality public education, where I thought the school had better extracurricular activities than the quote unquote, the black school did.
That's right.
Right. And off what ends up happening is when you put them in those environments where when they look around, all they see is white students or white classmates where their only friend choices are white. This is what ends up happening. And they don't necessarily understand the harm of it. Because I remember I debated racism in the third grade, in the fourth grade, fifth grade, sixth grade, seventh grade. I was debating it against white students.
That's so fascinating because, and the reason why, just in terms of when you're talking about the progression of you debating racism in the fifth and sixth grade, that to me is such a very clear marker on the trajectory of the national discourse around it. And I say that because when I was that young, it was still taboo to challenge. It was still taboo for white folks to challenge the notion of racism because we had been through the civil rights struggle. We had been through the 70s and the 80s. And I think people were still in that point where they like understood, oh, it's not a good thing to be called a racist. I need to sort of like pipe down. So it was like this one slither of time where folks sort of stood down and cooled their jets on this conversation. I'm talking about white folks. And then gradually there was a movement that built that we've seen really sort of explode and manifest in what we have today, that has pushed back and said, I want to challenge it. I don't believe that racism exists.
Listen, man, in high school, I remember
I was like right in that slither of time where like that conversation would not have been appropriate. And so to hear you say,
oh yeah, man,
a few years later that was a conversation tells me that like they weren't going to allow that period to be very long at all before they.
No, I will end on this. I remember being in high school and there was this girl, I forgot her name now, but she didn't get into, like, I think she applied to Georgetown or Princeton or somewhere, and she didn't get in, and the black girl got in, and she was livid and said, this is affirmative action. I said, so you're mad that your application didn't get in, and I think the black girl who got her name was Tika, and Tika got in, and you're mad that you didn't get in because Tika got in. That's affirmative action because Tika get it, and I didn't. Man, like, maybe you had a bad application.
I listen, being in prep school, and this is the last thing I'll say on this, being in prep school, someone told me, if you did not know where your classmates were on issues of race, wait until college acceptances happen and it will all reveal itself. And boy, were they right.
Oh, it came out, baby.
Were they right? All right. We've spent a lot of time on that, which we should have, because it is the anchor.
Nolan, this whole show is dedicated to Nolan.
Yeah, we could have really spent the entire show on Nolan, but there are a couple things that we do need to talk about. Specifically, we're gonna make some adjustments here. Richard, it seems like with the latest on Iran, we are going backwards more than we're going forwards. Why don't you tell us what's going on there?
Sure. I mean, I want to say, I told you also, if you were watching our show when we were part of the Instagram live world, I said at the beginning, for every day that we're in this conflict, count that as a month. We are now in July. We started this sucker in about February. So that's February, March, April, May, June, July. So we're about 7 months into this sucker, 6 months in. And at NATO, when we taped this show, Trump had just relaunched attacks on Iran. At the NATO summit, Trump said the following, that one, we would hit Iran again. He said the ceasefire is over. He said, I think it's over. And this is the quote, I don't want a deal with them anymore. They're scum, says the president. He says, we'll hit them hard again. And there'll be a series of powerful strikes against the Iranians. This basically says that 60-day memo, that's a dead deal. I think we can expect, Charles, for oil prices to once again skyrocket. and we can expect this conflict to be prolonged. I would say, I mean, listen, if I was a betting man, I'll say we'll probably be here until November, maybe December, because I think the Iranians have been very clear here that they want the best deal for them. And they have always, and this is the mistake I think that the Trump administration is making. They think they could bomb Iran into submission.
Right.
The Iranians are like,
still not getting it.
They don't get it. Iran is like, we don't have to win the war. We just have to win the negotiation.
Yes.
And we know what pressures are on Trump. The first pressure that's on Donald Trump is the markets. Right?
The second is the midterms.
The second is the midterms. The third is the world, right? Because if we can shut down the strait again, which we will do tonight, we'll drop some mines, and we also can expose the Trump lies, because Donald Trump keeps saying we've decimated their military, but Iran was able to strike Bahrain yesterday, and Iran was also able to strike other Gulf nations, and Iran was also able to strike 2 ships. Trump says that, he was able to take out some of their smaller boats. Iran has drones. So they clearly have not completely decimated the Iranian military. And Iran tension results in there's a gray area around the Straits of Hormuz. And it seems very clear that there might be more mines put down. And I guess by the time you're listening to the taping of this show, I'm sure Iran will announce that the straits are closed again. And we will see the price of oil skyrocket. As we are talking, the Dow has tumbled 500 points as the price of oil has jumped. Since, obviously oil's traded daily. The Dow is now, like, as we've taped this show, the Dow has tumbled another 100 points. And I want to say that the price of oil has jumped, and I'm trying to find it here. As we tape this, the price of oil has jumped another 20 or 30 points. So, but this is what I always knew was going to happen. This is not shocking to me. We think we can bomb our way to a solution with the Iranians, and we can't. And I think the other winner here in this moment is Bibi Netanyahu, who gets to continue to bomb Lebanon now that this deal has now shredded. And I think I want to get your take on this. And I think what makes this also so interesting is last week we heard Vice President J.D. Vance talk about how great it was working with the Iranians and how great and how great they are as negotiating partners. I guess that's a lie, because Trump just called them scum today. So who's telling the truth? So I guess we have 2 truths and a lie.
Right, 2 truths and a lie is hilarious. The one thing I'll say about this is the tools that are being given by this administration in terms of the continued fumble around Iran are only as valuable as Democrats' willingness to use them. I think that the way that this administration has sort of gone backwards on Iran continues to be a point of opportunity for Democrats, because we know that there are fissures all over the Republican Party around it. We know that the president has been trying his best to try and corral Republicans to support him on it. There was the second War Powers resolution that didn't pass. That was a result of him leaning on Republican senators who passed the first war resolution. And this is all because Donald Trump understands that this is not something that he is winning in the court of public opinion, and that many of the members of his party are vulnerable on. But execution and conversion in this moment is up to Democrats to take advantage of. And what I mean by that specifically is there are a lot of folks who are not in the weeds. They don't watch the news. They don't necessarily know the details around what's going on in Iran. And if you're not listening to the Brothers Briefing, if you're not watching Richard on television, if you're not watching me on television, then you wouldn't really know how bad this administration has fumbled this entirety of a situation. You would not understand the amount of your money as a taxpayer that has been and is continuing to be spent every single day around this conflict. That is the job of Democrats to make you understand. That is the job of Democrats to effectively message in ways that are clear and easily digestible for persuadable voters, to get to the polls in November. People have talked about the redistricting. People have talked about the voter suppression. Those things are very real, and I won't negate those efforts. But what I will say is that Republicans have handed, really Donald Trump has handed to Democrats a gift in terms of messaging. And if they don't utilize it with Iran to get people to the ballot box and to the polls in November on this issue alone, it's a winning issue. At least on a congressional level, at least, you know, it's an issue that can matter, especially when you frame it in terms of currency. When you frame it in terms of the currency of oil, when you frame it in terms of the currency of taxpayer dollars that are going out of the door, and they're not going to frame it in terms of Israel, but like if you just use those two.
To your point, there's a story to be told if Democrats are willing to tell it.
Yeah.
And the story starts with Spirit Airlines.
That's right.
I mean, Spirit Airlines would still be alive. I mean, they would probably be on the skids.
They'd be struggling, but they'd be here.
You would still be able to get your $5 fares to, like, you know, the Bahamas and your $5 fares to Tulum or Cancun if Trump had decided not to engage with Iran to begin with. What really took Spirit out was
the oil prices.
Oil prices were just too much to handle. And Spirit wasn't alone. I mean, the question now becomes, with no deal, with this 60-day MOU or memorandum of understanding, now in the shredder, right? As we're having this conversation, oil prices are up 4%, 5% for Brent crude. Right, I haven't checked the cost of fertilizer, which is probably also up. And we're looking at different weather patterns coming in, the El Nino, whatever the hell. That thing is getting ready to be wild. So we're going to see farm yields do some crazy things. Costs are already elevated. This will only make cost worse.
Right.
We could see Frontier fall. We could see more airlines fall.
JetBlue's in trouble.
Yeah, there's a lot of airlines that are in trouble. And I mean, I think what Democrats have to do in this moment, mind you, war is bad in general. The American people, one of the reasons why Joe Biden never recovered was because the American people wanted to leave Afghanistan, but they didn't like how we left Afghanistan. Like, they didn't like the idea of Afghans falling off of C-7 planes. Like, they just didn't like to see it. They didn't like the idea that we lost troops on the way out. They didn't like that. And Trump said no more foreign wars. He promised no more foreign wars. And he decided that he was going to get into a war of choice with the one country in the Middle East that nobody wanted to fool with. Nobody.
Everybody knew. And it's almost like this might be a little bit of an older reference for you, but in Different Strokes, the Gooch. So Arnold in Different Strokes was afraid of the Gooch, and you never saw the Gooch. He just referred to the Gooch as everybody knew who the Gooch was. The Gooch was a bully, and you didn't want to mess with the Gooch, and you never saw the Gooch, which is why, if you are a hip hop head, you'll be familiar with the reference that Biggie makes where he says "invisible bully like the Gooch," and so. Iran is the Gooch of the Middle East. Nobody, I mean, you know they're there, you know they exist, but like nobody went to war with them on purpose because they knew what time it was.
Jimmy Carter was the last president to tangle with him, and it didn't end well for him. Okay, and he didn't, and they tangled with Jimmy Carter, and he was like, "Damn, I'm stuck." Every other president has said this is a bad deal. Let's not do it.
And you're the one who got duped. Congratulations, 45-7.
And you got duped, and you can't get, and there's no way out. Like, you cannot, and you're supposed to be the deal maker. You're supposed to be the deal maker of all deal makers, and you're stuck here. You really are stuck here.
Yeah.
And your response is, I will send my ships and I'll continue to bomb them. You've been bombing them, sir, since February. Like, you've been bombing them since February, and you've been going at it. And listen, you bomb them so much that we've run out of bombs. Like, we've run out of tomahawks. Like, we bomb them to the point where, like, we've exhausted a lot of our bombs. A lot of our missiles we've exhausted.
And you out here for anybody who's paying attention, I'm just gonna put it in plain language. Y'all here looking super stupid, like super stupid.
Because they're like, okay,
right?
Want to bomb us again? Bomb over there.
Let's get to our fast breaks, my friend. I know we had a little bit more of an extensive rundown, but we've had a robust show, and I think some of the other stories that we're talking about, quite frankly, might not even be around.
All right, it's time for the fast break. Let's do
it. All right. Fast break story number 1. More than 1,200 former Justice Department employees are urging the Senate to reject President Trump's nomination of acting Attorney General Todd Blanche to permanently lead the DOJ. Their argument isn't about politics, it's about independence. They say the Justice Department is supposed to serve the Constitution and not the president, and they believe that Blanche has blurred that line. Republicans argue that Blanche is carrying out the president's agenda exactly as voters elected him to. The fight here isn't over one nominee. It's over what Americans expect from the Justice Department and what they expect them to be, and that is independent. Law enforcement is not supposed to be an extension of the White House.
Here's another one for you, Charles. This one is about the Department of Homeland Security, disaster money connected to election rules. Yes, indeed, America. It is true. The Trump administration is reportedly considering tying some FEMA and Homeland Security grants to changes in how states run their elections. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Among the ideals being discussed is stronger voter ID requirements, proof of citizenship, and paper ballots. Supporters say if Washington is sending taxpayer dollars, it has every right to encourage election integrity. This is him. He cannot get off this voter fraud thing, even though there's no evidence of it. Critics say disaster preparedness money should not become leverage in election policy. Either way, another example of how the debate over voting is spilling into nearly every corner of government because Donald Trump still can't get over the fact that Joe Biden beat him in 2020, fair and square. I don't know. Maybe he's still looking for those 11,000 votes in Georgia. Too bad they all voted for Joe Biden.
Not going to happen, my friend. I am going to skip ahead to a really, really juicy one because I'm enjoying this one. And this is about 84-year-old turtle-faced Mitch McConnell, senator from Kentucky. Now,
Not
for weeks, I'm sorry?
Not turtle face.
Yeah, turtle face. Yeah. And now for weeks, former Senate Republican leader Mitch McConnell has remained hospitalized with very few public updates about his condition. That lack of information has fueled nonstop speculation online, including false claims about his health that have spread across social media. Republican leaders John Thune and John Barrasso say that they have spoken directly with McConnell and insist he's engaged. Following Senate business, that he wants to return, and his office said he's recovering, but continues to provide very few specifics. The story, however, is a lot bigger than Mitch McConnell, Richard, because at 84 years old, McConnell is one of several aging lawmakers whose health has become a national political issue, whether it's him, whether it's Dianne Feinstein before her passing, or concerns raised about other senators and senior members of Congress. Americans keep asking the same question: how much transparency should we have around the health of our elected officials, particularly when we aren't seeing them? There is also, of course, the political reality that McConnell has already announced that he is not seeking re-election, but if he was unable to complete his term, the Kentucky law would likely determine how and where his replacement was chosen, and this could shift the balance of power in the United States Senate depending on the timing. Look, some of y'all too old and you need to sit down before something like this happens, and that goes for all three branches of government. Because
look, but on this one, so he's camped out on my college campus because he's at GW, he's at George Washington University Hospital. There's Secret Service car or Capitol Police cars parked out at the hospital. His wife, Elaine Chao, was in China for 3 days. She has returned. And now that she's returned back to America, Secretary Chao, now all these flurries of statements are being released about his health is fine, blah, 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 blah. Scott Jennings, his former staffer, said he called him. But if he could have cohesive conversation with
Where
Scott
are you at?
with all these people. Can he call into a radio show? Can he call into Jake Tapper?
Why someone never heard his voice? Nothing.
I don't think he can. I actually think he's. I mean, and to the point we know he had a cardiac arrest, and there's some doctors out there who's like an 84-year-old who already has issues. There's like a 5% chance that you survive a cardiac arrest at your house. So like the idea that like he is alive, thriving, and well is probably highly unlikely. But for John Thune, I mean, I think he might be a life support. But for John Thune knows that he needs Mitch McConnell to stay in place, because if he is dead or if he is incapacitated, that leaves it to Governor Beshear, Democrat.
That's right.
To pick a replacement to serve out the rest of his term, which would then make a lot of these votes a lot more difficult. Because remember, Trump is tinkered with the balance because, you know, he pissed off Bill Cassidy. He pissed off some of these Republicans in there who are mad at him because he engaged in their primary.
And this is also why I gotta, and I'm just jump in here, and then Richard, you can take us home, because this is a thing, not just in the situation with McConnell that we're talking about, but the Supreme Court is already tied in knots, and it is tied in knots in large part because it's tied in conservative knots, and it's tied in large part because, for as much as people want to talk about RBG, Ruth Bader Ginsburg was selfish, and she did not step down when she had the opportunity to, because that would have enabled President Barack Obama to appoint another Supreme Court justice that was liberal or at least centrist in that way, and prevented the supermajority. Now there are the same questions about Sonia Sotomayor's health. There's the same questions about the longevity.
Sonia need to stay until we elect the Democrats. She better stay.
I understand, but you
better hold on, girl.
I hear you, right? But like, that's the thing. The thing is, if RBG stays, Sonia Sotomayor's health, leaves, Sonia Sotomayor's health becomes less of an issue. It's still an issue, but it becomes less of an issue.
RBG's been going.
No, what I'm saying is, if RBG leaves, then Obama is able to appoint another justice.
Correct. RBG should have left before Barack Obama left.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I mean. So later on, now fast forward, presumably that same justice is still on the court, along with Sotomayor, so that if for whatever reason Sonia Sotomayor isn't able to hold on, it becomes
the balance
slightly less of a right. You know what I mean? Because
listen,
if Clarence Thomas leaves, which everybody's expecting, and Alito leaves, which everybody's expecting,
they're gonna be
replaced. And then if Sonia Sotomayor gets to be replaced during the same term, my God.
But look, this is one of those things. This is where I don't agree with Ted Cruz on much, but I agree with Ted Cruz about term limits. I think you should term limit. I think there should be term limits in the Senate. I think there should be term limits in the House. And I do think, just like there's an age to get in, because there is, like, you have to be 35 to be a senator, 28 to be a member of that, to be a member of the House of Representatives.
That's correct. And then is it 35 to be president, or 40?
35. I think it's 35. 35. I think it's. I actually think the number is 70. I think it should be 75. Retirement age is 65. We'll give you 10 years on retirement.
There you go.
And after that, like, the fact that, like, Chuck Grassley's in his 90s and he's still up there.
And the other side to it is like, yo, we've seen this movie before. We know how it ends. It does not end well. But that being said, what does end well is the show. We had some very rich conversation here, and some of that is just exactly what you should expect from the Brothers Briefing. We don't always know where we're going to take things, but we had to do it for the people today because of Nolan Xavier Wells. We spent a lot of time. Nolan Xavier Wells. I said Norman. Nolan Xavier Wells. Thank you, Richard. And
we're dedicated to you, Nolan, brother.
That's right.
Let your memory be a blessing, man.
Yes, indeed.
We're gonna fight for your justice. We got Ben Crump. We got Ben Crump at the table.
That your name is not just only not forgotten, but that your story is really explored. and that people understand it, and that we get the answers that we as a community deserve. But until then, until next week, make sure you are liking and following the Brothers Briefing. Make sure you are sharing our content and following us on all the socials. We will be back next week with another amazing episode. You can catch us where all podcasts are. I'm Charles Coleman Jr. That's Richard Fowler, and we are the Brothers Briefing. Peace.
See you later.